Hi, my name is Fran Katz, and I worked for the Women's Fund for over 20 years. I was the second employee ever hired, and over the course of the 20 years, I had a number of titles ranging from associate director to grants manager, with many others. But primarily, I did pretty much every function that was going on: special events, managing grants, assisting with meetings, whatever was needed, because we were always a small staff, maybe about 4 people. And over the course of that time, I got to meet so many people and got to be involved in so many of the organizations. It was really, really exciting. My relationship began when I was looking to go back to the work world after being a stay-at-home mom for about 12 years. I was lucky to get a part-time job at the Women's Fund, which had just decided to hire somebody to help their executive director. And together, we grew the organization by leaps and bounds over the years. And we became known as the go-to organization for women and girls in Miami-Dade County. By far, the most exciting part of what we did was the grant making. And when I started, there were maybe about 8 grants for under 10,000 each. And we actually got up to over 50 grants one year. And we started giving some grants that were of much bigger amounts. But the core mission, the basic grant making, was always helping grassroots organizations who might not have been able to get other funding, who had a vision about how to help empower women and especially girls. We had a known focus for helping underserved girls. The Women's Fund came into existence because there was no funding out there in the world, and there still is not very much, that is specific for women and girls. The number that we had in the beginning was 7% of funding was specific for women and girls. And that made it really hard for that population to get grants to do the kinds of things that they knew that women and girls needed, but they just couldn't always get to. So over the years, there were many, many organizations that came to us and got their first ever funding from us. And some of them, because they got a grant from the Women's Fund, it gave them the ability to get other funding. You know, just like a lot of times you can't get a job unless you have some job experience to put on your resume. It works the same way. If nobody has ever shown that they believe in you and that they think you're worthy of support, it's harder to get funding. So people used to say that getting a grant from the Women's Fund, even though they weren't the biggest grants, it was like getting the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. It was something that they could show and point to and build on. And many of the organizations did just that. There were some that what they wanted to do, they didn't need a lot of other funding, and they were happy just to get our funding. There were others that took our funding and parlayed it into building their organizations and becoming known. And we were especially proud of the fact that there was a large number of organizations, which I don't have on the top of my head, but I'm sure I could think of about 25 that came to us and got their first funding and then grew. Some examples that you might know are Urgent Inc. Urgent got their first ever funding from us before 2000. And they were really masters at taking what they had, seeing what was available, and making that fit into the programs that they would then tweak, and building until they are now a very significant organization in our community, well regarded and well known. Another organization that we were the first funder of was Lotus House, the shelter for homeless women. And that organization actually was founded based on a special event we had to raise money for what was then a day shelter for homeless women. And at the fundraiser, people talked about the need for a shelter specifically for homeless women. And Constance Collins, who was at that event, said, I'm going to build such a shelter, but it's going to be where people can live and raise their families. And as you all know, she has done that brilliantly. And we always were so proud of Lotus House. Another organization that we gave the first funding to was LEAP, Ladies Empowerment Action Program, which was a program to help women who were in prison. They were taught entrepreneurial skills so that they could get employed when they were released from prison, because it's so hard to get jobs when you have prison on your record. And the idea was that they could learn how to support themselves in businesses that did not have a lot of startup costs, such as dog grooming, even house cleaning. And LEAP took every opportunity to not only build on that mission, but to build it bigger. And they now, as many of you might know, have a thrift store that supports some of them with jobs and with donations. They have a house where some of the people can be released to, because they saw that housing the women as they were released was a real challenge. And they have a bunch of stories of women who were successful upon graduating their program. Those are just some of the many that we are so, so proud of. Those are some of the anecdotes that will always stay with me. There were also some programs for girls, some as young as elementary school, girls who were in Liberty City Elementary School and were taught, because they had so few role models about how girls could be employed. They were taught to be empowered to work. They went on field trips to see women who looked like them working. They were taught etiquette, and it made a huge difference in their lives as they grew up. It made them feel that they had a lot more that they could contribute than what they had thought before. There was also a wonderful program at North Miami Beach Senior High School called GEMS. And this program was built by a shy math teacher who said the girls came to her and said, the boys have the Role Models of Excellence program. Where's our program? So she built one, and she came to us, never having done anything like that before in her life, and requested funding. She was so nervous, but she got her point across. And they had teachers who mentored the girls, who not only monitored their grades and had special events for them, and also took them on field trips to see women working, but they served as what they called their school moms, so that if the girls needed anything, like they told them, if you're out at night and you get in trouble and you don't feel safe, call us, we'll come get you. You don't have to tell your mom about it, because a lot of them culturally lived with families that didn't really understand life in the United States. And it was a real hard situation for them. And the teachers who were the mentors at GEMS, they also tried to find scholarships for the girls to go to college. And in many cases, they had to talk to the parents to let them know that the girl would be able to make more of her life and help the family more if she went to college, even if it meant giving up an immediate job. And sometimes the parents would have jobs lined up for them, and the teachers would have to talk to them and say, no, this is going to help your girl more in the future. It was just a wonderful resource for them. So as you can imagine, being part of the Women's Fund was a huge part of my life for so long. And especially, I was very proud to be part of its growth as it became a really meaningful and significant organization that literally changed the lives of so many. Obviously, I could go on forever talking about personal stories, about individual women and girls, about organizations for women and girls, and also the convenings that we came to be known for and held. So we would hold monthly meetings where people working on domestic violence would come together. And we also had meetings about immigrants. We also had meetings about all kinds of issues. So we had the monthly Freedom from Violence meetings. And this arose from the fact that we became involved very closely with 1 Billion Rising. 1 Billion Rising, as you may know, was not exactly an organization, but a loose conglomeration started by Eve Ensler, who believed that we had to end violence for women. 1 out of 3 women and girls is impacted by violence in their lives, and that is just too many. She developed a play called V-Day, or the Vagina Monologues, which was presented on V-Day, which coincided with Valentine's Day. That was amazing, that taught people about the impact and the pervasiveness of violence in the life of women and girls. And then she came up with the idea of having 1 Billion Rising, 1 billion people rising, dancing around the globe, and 94 countries participated, all on February 14th to bring attention worldwide to the ways that women and girls were impacted by violence. In conjunction with that, we convened a meeting and we invited everybody that we knew who worked in areas of violence. And we were aware, and they came to see at that meeting, that there were so many aspects of people working about violence against women. And they were working in silos. There were the people who worked on domestic violence, the people who worked on sexual assault, the people who worked on just all different aspects of violence. And included in that was homeless women, immigrant women. It really cut across every sector of the society. There was one woman there who worked on the images that were presented to girls, the sexualization of girls. And all these people together said, you know, we need to work on this together. We need to talk about the ways that we're doing overlapping work. So we had monthly meetings called the Freedom from Violence meetings. And every month we would have a different topic. It could have been about LGBTQ. It could have been about the impact in the emergency room of hospitals. It just really ran the gamut. And what it created not only was an environment to learn about these different aspects of violence against women and girls, but it also created a cohesive forum, a place for people who were doing this related work to come together and get to know each other and get to know the overlapping issues. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that trafficking of young women was a big issue that the Women's Fund shone a light on, because people did not know about it. Although we knew that this was happening, it turned out that the community did not know about it. Even the state attorney's office did not know the extent to which this was happening. And we had a program called Not in My Backyard, where we showed people that this was happening in their community and having significant impact. And the state attorney's office started a forum about it. They started a task force so that they could bring attention to it and prosecute it. And we tied in with Christie House, which we gave a grant to for their Project Gold that was working with girls who had been trafficked. And they convened on that topic and helped educate on that topic. And together, there was a task force, there was a lot of advocacy, and together we helped bring this issue to light in a very big way. So these are just some of the major significant ways that the Women's Fund made an impact on the community and brought changes. So I'm so happy to see that the Women's Fund is going to be resuming grant making. And I look forward to seeing not only the grants, but the growth of organizations in our community because of the grants that they can get. And I look forward to the impact of the Women's Fund, again, being what it had been.